So the English have just got themselves the massive win over New Zealand at Twickenham Stadium, 33 points to 19. This game separated by more points than many were anticipating. New Zealand getting off to a great start, but the English, alongside their POM squad, as it has been labelled, managing to close out the victory in quite emphatic fashion. And in this review, we're going to be looking through at who were the players who stepped up for these two sides, who maybe didn't quite perform as well, and what is next for these two teams. But jumping straight into it, the man of the moment, George Ford. From that number 10 jersey, firmly in control all throughout the matchup, made some brilliant decisions from that number 10 jersey, including taking a couple sneaky drop kicks near the end of that first half. They were 6 extra points that England very much so wanted and needed in that scenario to get them in the contest. Of course, very close heading into the halftime break. Another player who managed to step up, I felt Ollie Lawrence had a strong game from that number 13 jersey. Maro Itoje, the captain, letting his presence be felt all throughout the 80 minutes. It was exactly what the English needed, and also some great impact off of the bench for certain English players. And there as well for New Zealand, the players who stepped up in this contest. I felt Will Jordan was strong on attack as well as under the high ball, although he did get a little bit isolated at times, maybe just a bit too quick for the All Blacks fullback. Peter Larkai, he had a great game as the number 8, particularly in that first half. That is when we saw him at his most busy. And then also Quintal Paya, very solid game from the number 12 jersey, partnered with, honestly, one of the better Billy Proctor performances that we have seen for the young number 13. I know that he got a lot of stick for the way that he played in this game. People said as soon as they moved Leicester out to the left wing, it was going to cause problems in the midfield. But honestly, Proctor was one of those guys heading into this game with a huge amount of pressure. And I do think some people like to just blame him for the sake of it. There were certainly worse players out there on the field. They don't have to look much further than that number 10 jersey. But I think that Quintal Paya and Billy Proctor is a combination that New Zealand can build upon in the future for them as well. But we'll talk about now the players who did struggle out there on the field. First of all, New Zealand's scrum did not look at any way, shape or form dominant throughout this matchup. But the good news for the Kiwis was England's line-out was just as shaky. 50% accuracy for England throughout this contest. That is even with having Jamie George and Luke Cowan-Dickie as the hookers. Bit of extra pressure coming from the likes of a Josh Lord and a Scott Barrett. Now, the late sickness of Fabian Holland leaving him out for this game, I feel like that was felt a little bit for the Kiwis here, although that is, of course, not why they lost in this contest. But Beauden Barrett, what do you do with him? This was far from his best performance. Missing touch multiple times, giving the ball away, not quite finding the best passing options. Now they have that big decision. Do they start McKenzie up against Wales, or do they give someone like a Ruben Love a bit of a chance? But I do feel like Beauden Barrett, he can't play in that game. He looked fatigued. He looked almost deflated throughout the time that he was on the field, and you just can't really afford that in your number 10 jersey. Now, Cam Roigard suffering a bit of an ankle injury. It looks like it could be Cortez Ratama, Damian McKenzie as that 9 and 10 combination for the next contest, mainly due to those injury replacements that have to be made. We'll see Caleb Clark go back out onto the left wing. But overall, this game, it was physical. It was entertaining. Definitely after the match that we witnessed beforehand, it was very stop-start, that South Africa-Italy match. This game, not so much, although a little bit more so in the second half. But overall, a fantastic performance from the English. A bit of a lackluster one from New Zealand, while still having a few very decent moments throughout the match. I think I just saw there that Billy Proctor had the most tackles made out of any New Zealand player with 14 as well. But Maro Itoje, top of the bunch with the 20 in the contest. But nonetheless, I do thank you all very much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, of course, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and let me know what you thought of this match. It is just a very brief review. We've still got another match just around the corner between Fiji and France, as well as Australia versus Ireland. But thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one.